Hello everybody and welcome. Here it is. My 1974 BMW 5 Series E12 is finally running after 2 years of a very bumpy ride. There were moments where I actually felt on giving up on the whole project, but not really giving up for good. It's just simply stop it for a few months and pick it up again next year. In fact, that's something that happens with so many car restorations, and this wouldn't have been an exception either. But I just kept going because in the end, deep down, I really believe that I could get this car running properly. Of course, I didn't do it by myself, and thank goodness I had the right people to do the job. For the last 2 years, it's actually been nearly 2 years since I got this car from Portugal. A lot of work went into it. Not just the engine. The engine, although it was the where I spent most of the time fixing and most money as well, many other bits were replaced. Things such as brakes, suspension, electrics repaired, and so on. A little bit of bodywork as well, but not so much. So I would like to go through everything that I've done to this car so far. But just remember, this is still an ongoing project. There are still many other bits that need to be done, and I'm pleased to say that the list is getting smaller and smaller, which is a bit of a relief anyway. Tires. They are extremely important item on any car, and once I got the engine running, not great, my other priority was to get a new set of rubbers. When I first set my eyes on this car, it had mismatched tires, all poor quality, and one of them was completely down. So the only solution to get it rolling was to use a spare one that was in the boot. And believe it or not, that spare tire in the boot was the original from 1974. When this car was new, it even had the original stickers. Unbelievable. But of course, I couldn't use those tires here on the road in the UK. They wouldn't be good. So I got a full set of these Falcon Sincera. They do have a good rain rating and the ideal tires for a classic. The brakes, also extremely important on any car. The rear cylinder was completely sea solid. Actually, the trouble was that it was leaking fluid, so it was totally shot. The one on the passenger side wasn't too bad, but the front calipers were totally seized. There was no way to release them, so the only solution was actually to get new set of calipers, new discs, new pads, and I've also replaced all the hoses at the front, all the brake hoses at the front, new cylinders, new drums, and new shoes. So this car has a brand new set of brakes, apart from the rigid brake lines, which were in very good condition anyway. But and then it was just only a matter to bleed everything, and that was it. Unfortunately, it wasn't like that. At the same time, I also replaced the master cylinder, thanks to my friend Rui, who, when he handed over the car to me, he gave me a brand new old stock brake master cylinder. But the big issue was on the twin remote servos. Now, these twin servos were the bane of my life, and at some extent they still are. The thing is, uh, because BMW, when they engineered this car, was for the left-hand drive market, that when it came to produce the right-hand drive market, they realized there was not enough room for the brake servo to fit on the driver's side, because it would foul with the exhaust manifold and also with the steering column. So the solution they came up with was to use a set of twin remote servos from ATE. And unfortunately, it is a terrible setup. It does break when they work, but then with time they have a tendency to leak, especially on cars that have been standing for quite some time, which was the case of this car. Usually happens when you try to bleed the brakes, but I do believe that these were shot way before I started to bleed the brakes. Um, at the moment, the issue that I've got is that I don't have a lot of servo strength. The car brakes well, but I just need to push the pedal a little bit harder. But I did try to use a different solution, which was used back in the day, as they say, back in the 80s, not just only on the E12, but also on the 02 cars. And the owners, they would use Lockheed remote servos. They would just assemble them in tandem as a temporary solution for their braking systems. But it is, although compared to what it says on some publications, they say the system is actually better and works. But the fact is that many BMW, classic BMW enthusiasts said it does not work. I did try that on this car, but I just simply could not get it to work. This car, the right-hand drive models, they do have a bit of an art when it comes to brake bleeding. It has to respect a certain sequence, and if that sequence is not done properly, the brakes will never work. I did that sequence to the T, and it still wouldn't work. And a lot of enthusiasts said, look, the Lockheed system is not really ideal for these cars. It actually does say in the boxes that those servos do not work in tandem. So what I'm going to do next is to take these servos out and get them refurbished by a professional, which meant that this car will be out offline for a few weeks. Not yet, but it should be ready in September. And hopefully I will have a fully functioning braking system. This was a big headache for me. Another area of intervention was the suspension, because the suspension before this one was extremely wallowy. It was absolutely horrendous. You think that this is bad? Think again. It was really, really bouncy. But what I've done, it was actually a simple job. I just replaced the front shocks, replaced all the bushes, the control arms, the control arm bushes, ball joints, etc., etc. The only area that still needs some work is actually at the rear. The rear shocks are not actually in too bad shape, but they will need to be replaced at some point. But there is an upgrade which I'm going to do in this car, and that is to install a rear anti-roll bar. I've already got the part. It comes from a six-cylinder car. Um, and on base models, four cylinders, and also some base model six-cylinder cars, the 520, for example, they did not come with a rear anti-roll bar, and I think that will improve the handling. It does feel a bit wallowy, the car and so on, but reading the press at the time, they did say that the car um, had a little bit of body roll. Okay, it was typical from the cars from the 60s and the 70s, but even the press at the time, they did make a point of that. So it wasn't so much of the ultimate driving machine. So a rear anti-roll bar should really make a good difference. And apart from that, there is no more work needed for the suspension. Great news. Now, electrics were not really much of an issue. All it needed in some cases was brand new bulbs, cleaning contacts, and everything was ready to go. Especially all the bulbs, even the headlight ones, they actually did work, but I still put a brand new ones. And one good thing, actually, is that although this car lived most of its life in Portugal, from 1979 up to 2002, the original owner who bought this car in South Africa, when they took the car to Portugal, they actually never swapped the headlights for the driving on the right. They just kept the original South African ones, which is amazing. And that means I don't have to swap these, which is actually very good because they are very rare to find for the E12. And that has been a blessing for me. The only electrics issue was really the instrument cluster, where some dry solders had to be repaired. I had to well, bridge by bodging some of the work, but apart from that, everything does seems to work except the heated screen. But I don't really intend to use this car in the winter, so that doesn't bother me too much. And then of course the cosmetics. I really haven't done much on this car apart from, well, giving it a few washes and a very light polishing on some of the chrome. Well, it's actually not really in bad shape, some of the areas. For the wheels, for example, the wheel bezels, I just use a very fine steel wool, just clean all the rust, polish it, and it comes up very nice and clean. And in here, this is actually very good news because they are made of polished stainless steel, so they will never rust. The wheels, well, they might need to be painting at some point, but oh well, I'll just leave it as they are for now. Same thing in here. This is made of anodized aluminium, so just a quick clean, not so much. This is all stainless steel as well, and this is another area which it needs also improvement. These mirrors are not mounted properly, so I have to mount them a little bit higher. It's just a bit of a silly area because from where I'm sitting I can barely see this mirror in here. Same in here, this one, these are chrome but clean up very well. And the rear bumper, some of the chrome is starting to come off, but I'm going to leave it as it is because at the end of the day, that's a bit of the character of the car, isn't it? But these bits I simply couldn't stand. The strips were completely burned, so I just went on eBay and then bought these chrome ones, which make the car look a little bit better and tidier as well. And this mirror here also needs to be mounted slightly higher because again, I cannot see it very well. I can just about see the full mirror well when I'm sitting in the car, but still not very well positioned. And the same here, these are stainless steel, which is also good news, but I needed to adjust the spindles because when the wipers work, they go slightly over. You can see the marks in here, they go slightly over the rubber. Talking of which, I decided not to touch. I'm a little bit concerned about what's behind. And same thing in here. Actually, it shouldn't be much of a problem, but I do have a second-hand rubbers to go, and it's just really finding the time to fit everything. Apart from that, and of course, if you're asking why I don't have nasty modern number plates, well, they only cost £20 and all the budget has to go through other things. But if you would like to sponsor me for brand new period 1974 plates, well, feel free to drop me a line. The rest of the paintwork, well, it could be worse. You can actually fill in here. It feels like a sandpaper. It needs a proper clay bar and polishing. But there are some areas which have a little bit of rust which I needed to treat. Yes, I would like to have it polished. Some of you might say, oh, just leave it as it is, it's part of the character of the car. But if I can improve without modifying it, then I will do it. There's a little bit of a rust hole on the door, and that's it really. The bumper, unfortunately, is a little bit bent, but that's actually not the bumper itself is not too bad. It's the mounting behind it that needs to be straightened, but I will do that at another time. And underneath, it is in very good condition. Okay, the pictures don't do it justice, but you can see how is the underneath. There are no rot marks or anything like that. You can see that some parts are actually brand new. Not too bad, eh? Just a little bit of dust and so on. And this car, in fact, does come with a under tray, which is not fitted at the moment because I want to see if there are any oil leaks on the floor in order to me to detect any problems. And you can see all the fuel lines, all the brake lines. You probably could see and think, oh, is that all under seal and so on? Well, actually, it isn't. It's actually all wax, and that's why this car has been so well preserved. It's because it has been waxed basically from new, which is really good and helps to prevent basically to prolong the life of the car. interior was more like a case of a cleanup. When I set my eyes on this car 2 years ago, it was absolutely filthy because it was dusty, and also rats have been living in it as well. There are some rat marks around, bits that have been chewed, which affected also some electrics behind the clocks. All of that has been sorted out, but I gave it a good shampooing of the carpet, deep cleaned the vinyl seats, and it all looks very good now. The only shame really is with the dashboard. When I had this car 20 years ago, this interior was immaculate and the dashboard was perfect, not a single crack. And now it's riddled with them. I'm not sure what to do with it. I might just fill up the all the cracking bits with some polyurethane seal and so on. But at least I did something to spruce it up, and that is to paint the vents. I still needed to screw them back into place, but these all have a tendency to go grey with age. The quality of the plastic, unfortunately, is not very good. And because this plastic is very fragile, I could not use heat, so I just use a leftover can of black paint that I had in the shed, painted them over, and they look much better. Really smartens up the interior. And everything in here now works. I did fix some switches, deep clean everything, and the radio, which needs to go back in place, actually does work. It's a late 90s radio. It would be better if it had a period radio, and it's a shame that whoever owned this car after myself got rid of the original AM Sanyo radio. I know the German cars did have radios from Blaupunkt, but the South African cars came with radios from Sanyo. But I'm not going to spend any more money because I simply run out of money doing all the jobs on this car. So I just to clean up this Kenwood unit, and it actually does work. I just need a piece of paper in order to hold the panel in place. But I might just use a cassette adapter which has a Bluetooth connection and use it for my phone. The speakers are rubbish. They are 1990s supermarket brand ones, and they need to go. But they at least work. Um, then I would like to paint the steering column here, the cowling. This is actually made of aluminium. The paint has come off, so I just needed to repaint again. And some chrome plastic needs to be done. I might just sand it off and then use some chrome paint and then just take it from there because there's no more money left. The cigarette lighter, it's brilliant. It does work and it's never been used. And the same with the ashtray. It has never been used. And the funny thing is, do you know what these pieces are? These are parts from the ignition barrel. The ignition barrel that broke when I owned the car. I've put the bits of the ignition barrel in here, and I've been here since 2003. Whoever owned the car never bothered probably to open it. Unbelievable, eh? Oh, and that's the other thing. The ignition barrel, it needs to be replaced because now I have this awful contraption. But once I have a bit more time, then I will do it. The heater blower works, but unfortunately the heating does not, because the valve, the switching valve leaks, which is a common fault in these cars, and it doesn't work. But I don't intend to use this car in the winter, so that doesn't bother me too much. Also, the rear view mirror. It had an awful, very long mirror, and I got a replacement that came from an E28, which was a simple job, and it's so much better now. Oh, and I nearly forgot the steering wheel. The horn or anything, none of them did work. Actually, the two original horns they were broken, so I just went on Amazon and got a new set. The buttons on the old steering wheel didn't work either. It was cracking all over the place. And luckily, I found on eBay one exactly like the one I used to have in this car for just about £40. That was a complete bargain. I still have the original steering wheel, but I think I would rather have a slightly smaller wheel. This feels way too big for my liking, but it's the original one from the car, so I think I'll just keep it for now anyway. But there were also many other things that probably needs to be doing, certain door rubbers, and other bits and bobs here and there, cosmetics, but they are not really that important for the time being. Now, let's talk about the most important bit of this car. It's the engine. And here it is, the engine. This one comes from 1980s BMW 318i E30, so it is a 1.8 unit with LE electronic fuel injection, which is actually a very good thing because it brings the car a little bit more up to date, smoother running. And if I want to do future things with this car, future upgrades, the fact that it has fuel injection, it does really help. I think it was a worthy improvement compared to the older 2-liter unit, twin carb, due to several reasons. But the journey to get this engine, before this journey, wasn't really the smoothest. So I faced the prospect of a very expensive rebuild of the original engine, and since I couldn't find one in good condition, everything was just basically in need of a refurb. I did ponder several possibilities, putting a 6-cylinder engine, but the NEM30 engine, which would bolt onto this gearbox, wouldn't be good because this gearbox is too weak. When this car was made, there was 2 automatic gearboxes, one for the 4-cylinder and another one for the 6-cylinder cars. It was only in 1975 they've come up with a one gearbox. I think it was a 3HP 22 from ZF that could be used on the whole range of engines. This one is too weak for the 6-cylinder. So in order to put a 6-cylinder engine, I would need to get a new gearbox, prop shaft and differential, and the costs would just simply mount up. Yes, I probably could put an M20 engine, but that needed its gearbox and so on, and it will be way too much. So the easiest, most straightforward solution ended up being getting an engine from a E30 or even a E28, although BMW E28 518i's are very hard to come by. I did ask Mark McLaren, who was a specialist who did the conversion, ask him, look, is this a worth the replacement? And he said, yes, it's much cheaper. And then he could do the conversion for me, because it's not just simply just bolting the new engine onto the gearbox and on mounting points and so on. Because this car is electronic fuel injection, it needed other adaptations. Luckily, Mark knows what he's doing, so he could do all the conversion to the fuse box, fit an electric fuel pump, because the original carburetor engine does use a mechanical one, which is driven by the camshaft, and a few other things, electrics upgrades and so on, in order to not to have any issues with the engine running. So I took all the engine out, put this one back in, left all the ancillaries on the side, had to make an adaptation on the bulkhead to feed in the ECU, which now lives in the glove box. But how did I come across this engine? Well, it was absolutely incredible, because it was on a Saturday morning. I just sat down and I started to look at these engines, and I found one for sale just 10 minutes away from my house. And that engine happened to be fitted previously to a 1971 1602. So the owner bought that car with this engine in it, instead of the usual 1600 single carb. But then he wanted a little bit of extra power, so he bought an M44 engine with a compressor. It is a very juicy car indeed. And then he put this one for sale, and it couldn't be any better. He said the engine was running very well, and the thing is that it came with every single series: the combo box, the ignition module, the ECU, the airflow meters, everything, which made the conversion job so much easier without having to scrounge for parts. And it was an absolute blessing. So I just got that engine, swapped the engine over, just bolting everything on, left it, and then one day I took it to Mark McLennan, who did the magic of adapting to the current loom, fitting an electric fuel pump and a bigger fuel filter, sorting out all the electrics, and this is the result. And there you have it. I am very pleased with the results so far. Still a few jobs to be done. And you probably ask me, how does the car drive? Well, the car drives very well. I just do not like this 3-speed auto. It is very archaic for my liking. But I would like to upgrade this car to a manual at some point. Not this year, obviously. Probably next year. I don't know. It depends on funds and availability. But so far, so good. I've done over 200 miles in this car this week. I've been taking it to work or shopping and so on, and I couldn't be more pleased. Um, it's been a hell of a journey, and um, when it's a car like this that was nearly scrapped back in 2000, um, it really has come a long way. This is a car for life. I will never sell this car, and I'm despite all the troubles, despite the wanting to stop, I never really wanted to give up and stop completely and get rid of it. No, that was never on my mind. So yeah, I will be publishing later videos of some of the work that I've done on this car. It will be the suspension, brakes, carbs and other bits and bobs that I've done to this car. I thought it would be better to do separate videos rather than just doing one very long video about me doing absolutely everything. I just wanted to give a quick overview about the work that's been done. And on that note, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next video. Take care.